Hi, I'm actor and director and sometimes musician Cole Spivey. I wanted to symbolize this candle for film and talk about theater too. So we have film, right? At times the light comes on and the light goes off, and we have theater, which it doesn't really matter about the light. Um, so in theater, we always use our five senses. Okay? So in theater, we always use our five senses. One of the films that I made the first time was called Bulb. And I did that in 2011, or 2010, 2011, after my first wife, half Sicilian, decided to leave me. She opened the door and said goodbye and shut the door. I've never seen her since 2010 or so. But I started working on Bulb, and that was about 2,000 posts off my Pigeon Pigeon 1 YouTube post, they're all in dailies right now. And there's a few segments that I did edit using a beta program off of YouTube to edit, and Richard Massey helped do coming attractions for Bulb. Bulb's still in post-production, and it's been since 2012, going into 2013 or so. But Bulb right now is behind me. And I'm working on another film. And I know you've heard the title of it, but I'm not going to talk about that other film that I'm working on. So I'm not talking about the other film that I'm working on, which is I'm in pre-production right now. We've already started shooting exteriors and a few other practice scenes and things, and we're working on something new. Okay. So I wanted to talk about something different. I wanted to talk about film versus theater, or theater versus film. So we have film and we have theater. And talking to other professors across the nation, which I've been trained all over the nation and the world to be an actor. And somehow music came in my bloodstream since I was a boy, because my father was a guitar player. Okay, my father also was a famous jeweler. My father was, he worked in Eutectic Metals. He helped create that. My grandfather helped him. My grandfather was a genius and learned how to purify metals and precious metals. And he taught that to my dad. My dad turned that into $1 million business. Give me a moment. I didn't get quite set up like I wanted to. Because I took that fan will stop eventually. I took a 3-point lighting class at NYU when I was a teenager. I snuck into New York and I snuck into NYU to talk to a Polish film director. No one knows this. I never told anyone about this. And at the time, Schindler's List had come out. And a lot of the students at NYU did not like Schindler's List. And some did. Most of the students did like Schindler's List. I liked Schindler's List. But the film director didn't, that was there at NYU that day when we were in class. When I was I was just turned 20. And I didn't really see anybody famous then, but this film director teacher, I think he was from Poland, and he didn't like the point of view that Schindler's List was taken. He did not like the fact that they used a sex scene and that they were kicked out of one part of the country and had to move to another European part of the country, or another European country. They were kicked out of one because of that sex scene. And he said this is not something they needed to do, and why not make a film about the Holocaust through the eyes of a boy? And I didn't argue with the guy. We just listened to him. But we told him, you should really go see Schindler's List. We thought it was really good. I saw it when it opened in Dallas, and it was a standing ovation. It was a very powerful film. But the reason I'm mentioning this is because I've had all these different trainings on film alongside of me also being a theater actor and starting off in theater. I started off in theater when I was about 17. I wanted to be a rock star when I was a teenager. I didn't learn to play guitar until I was about 17 or 18. That's when I got into theater and got to do these things like memorize monologues. And I saw great films like Hamlet with Laurence Olivier, showing how powerful theater can be. and then bringing it into film. And then also another film that I saw, of course, was Rebel Without a Cause with James Dean. And then a film I saw that changed my life was Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver with Robert De Niro. And that's when I realized that film was something I wanted to explore. But I did it through theater. So I think even my thesis play, which was Man 1, Man 2, I did use some things with film, using my hands like this and doing the character. And I directed these 3 actors, or well, it was 2 actors, me being one of them, and then Danny Whitworth and my RA, this black guy who played Lady in Man 1, Man 2, which I don't even know if anyone has a copy of that, but it was my thesis play at UNT. And then one of the Lady would do this thing where, he was pretending like he was a filmmaker in the actual, in the play. So plays have always been important. It was always important to play. And film was always something I knew it was there. I didn't feel like I needed training in film. I needed training in theater, and I needed training in acting. I needed to know that. That was something I needed to know the most of. Then I would get into the technical thing. Now that I got into film very heavily, I've noticed this thing is coming out of me that this is going to be a technical death. Technicalities are the monster of film. It's all technical. Theater it is, and that's why I wanted to talk to you today about film and about theater and about why I'm going heavily into film now. Theater takes practice. You cannot do theater without practice. And I think Grotowski, the great director of theater, he wrote Into a Poor Theater, and I studied with Margie Hayes, who talked about Grotowski constantly, but didn't show us all his secrets, but she did mention some things because she was a disciple of his in Poland. And I think one of the things that he was so big about was physicality and exploring the physical body, but it was also about touching the audience in a spiritual way and having the actors so well trained, like dancers or like gymnasts, that they could move the audience just by being in the room with them. And that's kind of how what Grotowski was about. In film, you can do that, but there's a distance between the two. So we use all our 5 senses, okay? In theater, we use all our 5 senses. So we can smell the actors, we can taste the actors, we can see the actors, and we can hear the actors, okay? So we can hear them, and we can see them, most importantly. We can smell them if we're close enough. We can smell the actors in theater if we're close enough to them. I know it's funny, but we can. We can taste them if we really wanted to. We might go over there and like lick one of them, like, hey, do you mind, lick their skin and taste them. If we could, if they allowed it, we could do that. Okay. So we know we can hear them, and we know we can see them. We know if we're close enough, we can smell them, and we can taste them. So we're getting in to the 5 senses. So that's where we're going to see, does Cole Spivey know all 5 senses? What is he missing today? All right. So there is a 6th sense. It was funny because when I saw M. Night Shyamalan's 6th Sense, excuse the pronunciation, M. Night's 6th Sense, I was at the Poli Sci room, the Poli Science room. I used to sneak in there because they had video recorders that were inside the televisions for the classrooms. So I'd go to a video store because I didn't have a TV and I didn't have a VCR, and I'd go in, and at night I would stay there and I'd hide, and when the janitors would leave, I'd go into one of the rooms and I would stick in the VHS tape and I'd watch it, and I'd have my popcorn and my candy and I'd watch the movie. Then after it was over, no one would be around. They didn't have like those spy motion detectors where you walk in the hallway, the alarm would go off. They didn't have those at the poli-sci room yet. Then I'd walk out at the end, of the movie. And after I saw The Sixth Sense, I was very scared to walk out of the long hallways. I was horrified, and I left. That movie really affected me because one of the characters in it was named Cole. And I left, going down this poli-sci room, waiting to see a ghost or whatever. And I left, and the door locked, and I got out okay. But I'd rent movies, and I would sneak in the poli-sci building, and then the janitors would finish up. I'd watch my movie, and then I would leave. So I trained myself in in theater, I mean, in film, kind of on the go. But when I talk about theater, I'm talking about the five senses. So we're talking about this, the sight, so we can see the actors and we can hear them. That's the most important things. Then, of course, we can smell them if we're close enough. We can taste them and we can touch them, especially after the film's over. We can shake their hands. After the theater, after the theater show is over, not the film. I'm sorry, I get lost in the fact when I'm watching an actor on stage, it's not a film. So we can actually touch them after the show. We can shake their hands. You cannot do this in film really at all, but you can see them and you can hear them. So film does something different. Okay. So remember, theater, we have the five senses. So we go down and we sit in the seat, if there's a seat to sit on, or we stand, or we can sit there. We can watch the actor in theater. So we can see them and we can hear them and we can smell them and we can taste them and we can touch them. We have that opportunity to do that in the stage. Okay. Most cases when you go to the theater, you're only going to see them and hear them, but those options are still there. So it heightens everything. So the theater is a very spiritual place to go to, and it can affect you in a dramatic way. And then some people believe in a sixth sense, and I think that belongs in the theater too, just as well as I think sickness belongs in the theater. Like Antonin Artaud talked about sickness and the double theater when he wrote the double theater. So I've talked about a lot of things really quick. So this would be an advanced masterclass kind of thing if you know theater and film, because you're going to, who's Grotowski and who's Antonin Artaud. But these are also things that you need to learn about, and you need to read the double theater. I'll show you the book. So a couple of books that I have, one being out of print, is I have a book right here. Okay, so what I was talking about Antonin Artaud in the theater is this book right here. Okay, so this is a book it's called Theater and It's Double by Antonin Artaud, which is this guy right here. Okay, Antonin Artaud. So he believed the sickness belonged in the theater. So he had some theories about theater, and he writes it in a very poetic way, and he's from France, and this guy should be explored right here. So we're going to move the lamp so we can really read his name here. Okay. Now we're going to talk about someone else. I'm going to turn a light off that I don't like. Okay. This guy is Grotowski, and this book is out of print. So this is an out of print book that I was given to by Marjorie. She studied with this guy. And this is Grotowski, and he's a Polish director. It's a very difficult book to read, and trust me, Marjorie gave these kind of copied books to her theater students, and I've read it a few times. It's like reading a science manual, but it's got some of the photos that they worked with throughout Grotowski's career. And when he died, his burial, he was brought in through New York, so he was important in the theater. And Grotowski would train his actors like gymnasts. If you know who Meyerhold was, and I did a post before that I was asked by the church members to remove this post. It was about a Russian director named Meyerhold, who was shot and killed towards the end of his career. And Meyerhold was the prized possession of Stanislavski, Konstantin Stanislavski. If you're into acting, you should know who Stanislavski is. He led to the method. So he started with the system, and he brought the Moscow Art Theater to New York, and they saw what Stanislavski could do with making these performances and these actors very, very real, how we behaved. They didn't just do these, oh, I'm sad. They were really sad in front of you, or they were really happy in front of you, or they blushed in front of you. And he trained these actors through the system by focusing on things like the magic if, circle of attentions, small circle being a tiny little thing, and then me and you being the second circle of attention, and then being the third circle of attention, which is the whole theater. And then he also studied, or he had them contemplate what the magic if was, if this was happening to me personally, and they would get personal with the performance and things like that. Meyerhold was a Russian and Soviet theater director, actor, and theatrical producer. And his experiments dealing with physical being and symbolism, his unconventional theater setting made him one of the seminal forces of modern international theater. And Stanislavski saw him as his prized possession, as his prized student. So Stanislavski liked him, but Meyerhold was asked to stop by the Russian government and the Russian officials, and he didn't stop directing him, so they shot and killed him. So we were very lucky in this country to be able to direct anything, to be able to film anything that we want, and to direct it on stage or however we want to, without being brought over to a wall and shot and killed. So that's happened to other theater directors and film directors. I don't know about film directors, but theater directors, it's happened. So I brought in some important people of the theater. Now, when I get into the film, there has been people that have crossed over from theater to film, Bergman being one of them. Egmar Bergman crossed over from using the theater and then going right into film, and he was one of the best. But what I wanted to talk about was the fact that film does something different. We know we have the five senses in theater because it's real. They're right there. In film, we break it down to two. We break it to sight and sound. That's it. Here's another thing about film. Now, I've been told this by many, many great teachers all across the nation. When I go back to that, all across the world, they always say the same thing, that in theater, the light bounces off the actor. So the light will bounce off the actor in the theater. In film, the light is the actor. So there's a difference between the two. You can see what's happening to someone right there in the theater. In film, it's manipulated more by using light and sound. Now, here's some things that have happened to me in the theater as opposed to what's happened to me in film. So when I was younger, just coming out of teenage years, I was taken by John Templin to SMU. Taken by John Templin. He was my teacher, and he took our theater class to SMU to see Marat Sade. So Marat Sade kind of changed my life when it came to theater, because it made me want to stay in the theater even more because of how fun it was, to one thing, to scare the audience. So Marat Sade, in the pronunciation or the full title of it, is The Persecution and Assassination of Jean-Paul Marat, as performed by the inmates of the asylum of the Charenton under the direction of the Marquise de Sade. And that's the whole title of the play. So they studied the theater in its double, Antonin Artaud, to affect the audience in a very kind of violent way, to seep the message into you and even get into your face in a very dangerous way, not in a playful way. They weren't doing it to be cute. They weren't doing it for the sake of theater. They were doing it to change who you were. And you could smell them as they did it, as well as hear them, and at times almost kind of touch them at times, because they got that close to you in a violent way and very close to you, okay? So this was in SMU, and it was done probably in 1992 or so. I don't know. And I did look at the dean, I think the dean of Yale now is at SMU, the old dean of Yale. So you could look through their archives and find out when they did Marat Sade, and it was a great, great performance. And I think it changed the way I looked at theater. Another performance that changed the way I looked at theater was Rebecca Gilman's A Glory of Living, which Anna Paquin was in, because I could see the very clear difference between the acting styles of the film, which Anna Paquin had, which was almost real behavior, and theater, which was very physicalized and very voicey and stage voicey. You could barely hear Anna Paquin speaking, same with Jeffrey Donovan in certain scenes, but then the other Broadway actors would come in and they would start acting with them, and it was like two different worlds. And I thought, man, that stage actor really doesn't have it, when you could see the difference between the way that they performed. And I didn't like it. It kind of made my stomach turn because I didn't think they belonged in the play. Philip Seymour Hoffman was the director of that. And I think it changed me because I could see the different differences in styles, and I don't know if they were trying to do that on purpose. But Jeffrey Donovan was very naturalistic, and so was Anna Paquin. The way that she would watch the television, there was a television that she was kind of looking at, and there was like a real reaction happening. So I was seeing some kind of thing. I don't know if she learned it from Holly Hunter or she just learned it from being a film actress, but there was some kind of real response going on in the same instance of like maybe Eleanor Duse or whatever. And if you're in acting, you need to read about her and theater. She was Eleanor Goulet Amalaya Duse, often known simply as Duse, was an Italian actress, and she belonged to a traveling Commedia dell'arte group, which was part of her family. She didn't know theater, so when she was brought up onto the stage, and I'll show a picture of her, she behaved in a very real way. So you can kind of see her. So the Italians at the time, when they would see her, or even the French or whatever, they were completely amazed because she was not only acting real and blushing for real right there on stage. There's another thing of her right there. You kind of see. She was not only real, but she just responded naturally. I think she may have been a little slow and not like other people, especially not like other actors. Okay. And so she changed how we even look at acting, because I think many great acting teachers like Lee Strasberg, Sanford Meisner especially, would use her as an example of how someone can blush right in front of you. Not everyone can find the internal senses to do that. And I think she probably did it naturally. But I don't know if they have a lot of her on film. But the words, or the word of mouth, or the grapevine of her, is that she was beyond genius because she was a real person behaving as a real person would behave, and not as the Commedia actors were. So it must have been similar to when I saw Anna Paquin acting next to these stage actors from Broadway. Because Anna Paquin, I think she was trained to act when she was maybe 6 years old, 8 years old, by Holly Hunter, who was a brilliant actress, because she won an Oscar at a young, very young age. So she had already picked up this eternal thing. I think in Irishman, she kind of has got that a little bit back. There's something about Anna that's innocent and yet